Thanks everyone for being here. Really appreciate you taking some time to go down memory lane here with some members of the Manhattan College women's soccer team. Great way to kick off a 4th of July weekend here to talk with some alums from the Jasper program. I want to thank the athletes and Coach Lawler for being here. We're going to jump right in, and we'll start with Coach, and then we'll get over to the athletes as we're talking with all alumni captains here, athletes that have been captains at one point or another during their Jasper career. Coach, I'll start with you. In your mind, what is the role of a captain on your team, and how do you go about selecting them?
It's a great question because there's not one answer to that question. You're always kind of evaluating your players from kind of the first time you meet them, of how they speak and what they say their goals are and how they carry themselves. And you just start to take mental notes, all the way through of what they can bring to the table in terms of leadership. And the first thing you're looking for is just, like I said before, how they carry themselves, the kind of work they put in, how they value their teammates and their friends, how they value their schoolwork, and just their overall work ethic with that. So, sometimes you just know right away. We always interview people. We ask their teammates. Sometimes we give their teammates surveys. But at the end of the day, people follow actions, right? They follow people who have put in the work and are walking the walk, kind of say. You find out pretty quickly who's just saying the right things versus who's doing the right things. And then as a coach, you just kind of plant the seed a little bit with Emma and Vic. I think I can even remember the first time I brought them in halfway through their freshman year and talked to them. And Taylor was kind of always that person who just did whatever you needed. And that was Taylor's pick as a captain was one of the most interesting because she came to us and said, "I want to be a captain." And we didn't necessarily think she might have wanted that, but we sat down with her and we were like, yeah, we want people who want to lead, right? So there's always, you're going to look at things from a holistic way all the time, no matter what. That's the way we go about doing it.
Good stuff, and you bring up a great point. I think a lot of people think of captains sometimes as well. You're a junior or senior, your default going to be the captain, but there's a lot of other things that go into it. We'll get now the student-athlete perspective, and I'll start with Victoria Reis. And kind of a multi-part question here, Victoria, but just give us a little sense of kind of your memories as a Jasper and kind of what you enjoyed about that experience and how that segued into being a captain and what that role was like for you.
Well, when I came in as a freshman, Taylor, who you guys will meet in a second, was our captain. And that's kind of one of my first memories is just having her grade and her class be such strong leaders and very vocal about what they wanted, where they wanted to take the program, how much it's grown, and exactly what they expected from us to do that. So right off the bat, it was a really clear message, a really clear goal. And so it was really easy for us to understand what was needed of us as soon as we got there. I think that's something I kept with me for all of the years, just to try and be as clear as possible with our goals and express them to everybody on the team so everybody was on the same page.
Taylor Salkowsky, Victoria mentioned that you were kind of the example of a captain that she had when she had come on the team. Just your memories of kind of taking on that role and what that responsibility was like for you.
Yeah, I think for me, the most important thing about being a captain was having my teammates and my coaches respect me. And I think the best way to do that was just to lead by example. So like whatever standard we were setting for the team in terms of athletics or academics and attitude, a captain should not only be meeting those expectations, but ideally exceeding them. And I think people tend to naturally gravitate towards and want to be led by a person who's working hard all the time, who's humble, and who has just overall integrity. Because when things get tough, either on or off the field, you want your teammates to feel comfortable if you're a captain coming to you for support or encouragement or guidance or whatever it may be. So I think for me, I just wanted to set a good example and be a resource for my teammates and hold myself accountable as well as them. That was the most important thing to me.
And Emma Saul, I'm imagining that some of what Victoria and Taylor talked on was some of the same things that you strive to be as a captain, but what's your memory of that and how you tried to carry out the role?
Yeah, so I'm going to completely echo what Victoria said a bit with a twist, but when we entered, we had Taylor and Kristen who, I mean, up until that time, I had never had captains like them. I think our freshman class had such an amazing transition from high school to college, in the sense that Taylor and Kristen and all the seniors created this environment where it was, not only were they welcoming us on the field, but they were welcoming us throughout the campus. And it made that transition, which normally is very difficult, much easier. But I also will say that their type of leadership that they showed was all through action. I mean, one of the biggest things is, no matter the highs, the lows, the difficulty of the game we were playing in, whether it was max finals or it was a game we knew we were going to win, you knew that Taylor and Kristen were going to go into every game with 100% effort. They were coming out gasping for air. They were coming out sweating. Kristen and Kelly now also used to lose their voice after the games. And I think that was something that kind of Vic, Nicole, Kelly, and I strive to be as captains as well, which my experience was a bit different because I was injured my senior year, but standing beside 3 other captains who were also gasping for air as they came off the field and putting effort into everything in what we kind of saw as a difficult season our senior year with so many injuries. It would have been easy for them to throw in the towel and, give less effort. And they gave effort until the end of our seasons, which, is so important in leadership. So, yeah.
Emma, you brought up your injury. I just want to build off of that for a second. When you're hurt, not able to play, but you're in that role of being a leader, how do you develop a different way to do it if you can't necessarily show it with your actions on the field?
Yeah. So I think that was one of the biggest difficulties in all of my career, and that in the sense that not only was I not playing my senior year, which I was so excited to do. I mean, all of our class, we got to our senior year, you're ready for senior year, you're comfortable, it's your last year, you want to give it your all. And it was like 1 week into preseason, that role for me completely changed. Also in the sense of captain, and that I was no longer leading in action, which is normally what I would have done. It became about kind of just the balance between all 4 of us captains. Each one of us kind of brought a different aspect to the leadership roles. All of us kind of handled different things. The team, I think, knew certain people to go through to for different things, and felt that level of comfortability with each one of us in different ways, which I think is really important. I tried to be a leader from the sideline, which is harder than it would seem, but because you feel like you're not giving enough, which I had a lot of conversations with Brendan about, and also the fellow captains, in what I could do more to try and help, but it all ended up working out okay, I think. So, yeah.
I want to stick with the athletes here. We've talked about what they did while they were players, they were captains. If each could give us a bit of an update of what they're doing now, and perhaps how taking on a leadership role on the soccer team helped in what they're pursuing after college. And Victoria, I'll start back with you.
So I graduated last year in 2019, and I started law school right away here on Long Island at Hofstra. I just finished my first year, and now I'm spending the summer with a federal judge. And I think that not only my leadership role, but just my time on the team in its entirety was so pivotal for what I'm doing now. I'm able to look at things that I know are going to be extremely time consuming, extremely difficult, and just kind of face them knowing that I'm going to get them done. A lot of my classmates now, it was a bit of a transition to know you're going to have to get up at 6 a.m. on a Saturday and study for 10 hours. And I would often get comments like, oh, how are you not so tired, or complaining? And it was something that I was already used to doing, because when you're used to doing that for 4 years playing college soccer, it's not that hard to transform. And I think one of the biggest things, and I just can't overstate it, is how much that Brendan and our teammates and the captains helped us develop as people, not only players. So it wasn't necessarily one lesson or one thing that we were taught, but just a mode of operating where we could take that into any challenge for the rest of our lives and know exactly how to tackle something, even if it's difficult, even if you think that you're going to fail, or even if you don't necessarily want to get up and do it, being able to still do that.
Excellent. And Taylor?
Yeah, so I graduated, and I didn't really want to say goodbye, so I got my master's, and I stayed on as a coach. And I think being a captain definitely helped me with that, just because it was basically like a little bit of a step up from being a captain, especially because I had played with the people who I was now coaching. So I went from being Emma and Vic's teammates to technically being like one of their coaches. So that definitely really helped me there. And then I agree with what Vic said, like not only just the lessons that you learn in discipline and time management and how to be part of the team, how to always work hard, but just the development that we had as people. I remember, I think it was my second year of coaching, and we had lost in the championship, and Brendan sent everyone kind of this very long email just outlining how, even though we didn't win and we didn't get that championship, the things that people are going to remember about us or about their time at Manhattan is just the different character traits that we developed, and the memories, and just like being a good person and having that drive to be better and to do better. And that's something that has shaped how I operate at work and just as a person in general. And I think it'll stay with me forever.
And Emma?
Yeah, so I obviously graduated last year with Vic as well. I work in analytics at a media agency. So yeah, I mean, not like they said, like not only did the captainship kind of influence, but also just being a teammate for years. I mean, we've all been playing soccer for God knows how long, and you have so many personalities over the years that you have to play with, but then you get to college and you're not just playing with them, you're living with them, you're traveling with them. I mean, all of those things, it's all about interpersonal skills, and that is what the workplace is all about. So, I mean, you're getting these managerial skills, these interpersonal skills as a student and as a student athlete, and then you're bringing that to the workplace as well. I will say that the number one thing that is always brought up in interviews, whether it's internships or it's real jobs, is that they call out whether you were an athlete or if you were a captain, because everyone knows how much work goes into being an NCAA athlete. Like, you're juggling all of these things. And I'll say one of the things that our program, the athletic department, has is this resume building program for the athletes specifically, which they were not wrong when they said, in your resume, highlight everything you do, all the hours you put in on top of a regular course load like everyone else does, because it truly is such a time management skill that nobody else gets the experience than we do. So, yeah.
That's a great point. You can find any number of articles that will tell you people love to hire college athletes because they have worked hard, they have worked as a team. In the case of these three women, they know how to lead. All benefits of being part of a college program. Brendan, you've had multiple captains in your tenure, 3 great ones here. I'm curious if there's been kind of a similar theme among all of them and what they've been able to do post Manhattan College. You're talking to 3 here that have been able to launch their careers in different areas. Do you find that the ones that have been captains that showed that leadership, they're able to carry that on to their next thing after they're done playing for you?
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. I mean, so, to be honest, the first 2 people I reached out to were Taylor and Kristen, and Kristen's been brought up here before because they believed in what we were trying to build when there really wasn't much reason to believe it. I mean, there's always a reason to believe in Manhattan College and everything we have to offer from an academic standpoint. But on the field, they could have went to other places, and they were looking at other places that were traditionally more powerful. So they took a belief, they had a vision, which is always very important for any leader, to see a vision and to try and enact that. And then, so Kristen right now can't be honest because, I'm going to get the vocabulary wrong, but she's doing something to become a doctor. I think it's her residency started today, or different rounds started today, or something along those lines, so, and, in the middle of COVID-19, taking those steps. So just the bravery of that to stay in that profession, is something huge. But we've had physical therapists, as captains. We've had educators as captains. People who've gone into, biologic research, things like that. Chemical engineers. I'm probably leaving somebody out, and I'll get a text later for leaving it out. But every different major that you can go into, because as Vic, Emma, and Taylor have already said, you can know everything you want, but to be able to go in and lead people and interact and set a vision and have a mission and create goals and hold people accountable to those goals. I mean, that's across any field. It doesn't really matter. And if you're not doing those things in those fields, then, you know, you're probably not going to be as successful as other people who are.
Let's look now at maybe some favorite moments from the time that each of these athletes spent with the Jaspers program. And Victoria, I'll go back to you. We know that you had this leadership opportunity, but is there a favorite memory as a part of this team that stands out in your mind?
I think all three of us are probably going to land on the same one when we say the semifinal game in 2015 against Ryder, and just winning that and knowing that all of the hard work from the people before me, and it was all just kind of paying off and getting to that moment. And for people who don't know, that was our first time that we'd ever made it to the MAC finals as a program. And we'd known how important it was for the players before and how much work had gone into that. So to feel like I had any part of that, and to know that everyone's work paid off, not only the people who were still on the team, but the people who had come before me. Because as you guys will, the people who are players now are looking to play. Even when you're an alumni, you still take a lot of pride in what the program is doing afterwards. So to know that all those people's hard work had paid off, and Brendan's vision for the team. But other than that, I just think I had so many great memories in what you would consider mundane moments, like sitting on the bus with all my teammates or sitting in the locker room, and that stuff that in the moment you don't necessarily think of. But if I think back now, it's one of the most cherished times I'll have.
Yeah, that is such a common answer when you talk about a favorite memory. It's often, and this goes for athletes across the board at the very highest levels, whatever they do, but it'll be maybe that accomplishment thing, winning something, and then right underneath is the trip to the restaurant in the town no one can remember because this person ordered that and everyone laughed and something happened. But it is just so common among so many teams. Taylor, maybe your favorite memory is the same as Victoria's, but I'll ask you the same question. Favorite memory from your time with the Manhattan Jaspers?
Yeah, I know that's kind of boring for us to all have the same one, but I will remember like that exact moment. For me, I'll even break it down to that game, but probably like the last 10 seconds, I remember like just getting emotional and turning to Vic. Me and Vic were playing like in the midfield at the time, and just realizing at that moment that we were going to go to the finals, and just that everything that I had signed up for and believed in when I was a freshman, everything we'd talked about every year working towards was actually materializing. I like got the chills. That was like one of the most surreal moments for me. So that was really amazing. And then of course, I agree with Vic, like there's so many moments that you don't think about until you're kind of out of it. Like I remember we used to play these warm-up games at practice, these like competitive warm-up games. And like me and Kristen would always get really into it. But Kristen was like a goalie, so she wasn't as good at like the technical parts of like when you were, and I would always get so mad at her. Everyone was always laughing. This game Kings that we always used to play at practice, and I didn't even really love the game that much, but everyone got so excited when we would play that game that it was just like such good energy. Everyone was laughing. Night games at Gaelic, I miss that too. Yeah, there's a lot. That's a tough one, but definitely the MAC semifinal is the top.
You hit on something interesting though, kind of getting emotional as that semifinal game comes to a close and feeling like this is the culmination of all this work that you put in. You can do all of that work and do all of the right things, and it doesn't mean you're going to get to do the thing you want to do, right? That you're going to get to win this semifinal, right? And obviously, or wanting to have won the next game as well. What keeps you going? What kept you going towards that goal without knowing with any certainty that it would end where you wanted it?
I mean, I think that we really only started to see the biggest progression in my senior year, that the goal was actually possibly going to materialize. So for most of my career, it was kind of chasing this goal that didn't necessarily seem like, it seemed like it was so far away. And I think what kept me going was the energy of my teammates, my class specifically, because we had come in and we had this passion to bring the program, especially with Brendan too. Like, we knew he came in with a vision to kind of turn the program around. And I think even if we weren't going to get there, the work that we were putting in would help people in the future. So like, we won that semifinal game, but we lost the championship. And I was, of course, devastated. But the next year I was like, I couldn't wait for that year for hopefully those girls to go ahead and do the same thing, because even though I wasn't technically on that team, I was still a part of it. So even if you don't get like that exact result, it was kind of just thinking about the bigger picture and the program as a whole. And just, you know, just working hard for Brendan too, I think was a big part of it.
If you look at the Zoom group chat right now, there's some links. You can look back at that game that everyone's been referencing here, the 2015 semifinal against Ryder, highlights, or recap, that sort of thing. Emma, I want to get your take. I'm assuming that you're going to jump in with the same memory. The only thing I'll add to it is, being a younger player at that time, did you have a sense of the history that was being made, the progress that had been made, and what it meant to Brendan, who was building it, and older players like Taylor, who had slogged through some tougher years?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, boringly enough, that is one of my favorite memories as well. And probably in those links, there's a picture that I think of, and I know they both think of, and Nicole Cupping probably thinks of too, is there's a picture of when Taylor realizes the game's finished and she's literally sobbing into Victoria. And Nicole is jumping. Nicole jumps in the air. I don't even know how she jumps as high as she does, but she's jumping into my arms. And that picture, like, just was the highlight. And that moment was the highlight of, like, all of freshman year, probably all of our career, just because of the fact that we had this mentality throughout that season where it was game by game. Like, every game is a new game. We didn't know we could make it to the finals. We weren't thinking that far ahead, and Brendan kind of set that in stone in the beginning, that every game, we conquer that game, we move on to the next one. We don't look ahead. We conquer that game, we move to the next one. And then it got to the end of the season, and I swear, some of us freshmen were like, wait, we only have this many, like, we have this much to get. How it flew by. And we were just so focused on individual games that we weren't looking at the full schedule. Like, we were just so, like, wrapped up in everything that for freshman year, I feel like it was just a totally different world than what we experienced, like, the rest of the years, because we were just so new, and it was just such a different feeling. But also, I will say that looking at that picture, I never really understood. I think I was so happy and I was smiling ear to ear, and I'm looking at Taylor and she's got tears running down her face. And I don't think I realized until my senior year or my junior year, probably, when we were in the MAC final again, that feeling and how much emotion can be wrapped into that, until you get to that point and you've put in all that work and you understand all the history of the program and of your teammates next to you. That now, I mean, I look at that picture in a different way and kind of understand it a lot more. So yeah.
That's excellent. Brendan, I have no doubt that you also enjoyed this moment that everyone has been talking about from 2015. We were talking, I think, in our first coach conversation earlier, about a month ago, about the idea of getting a team on the same page and kind of building one mind. And, you know, you were kind of joking like that you were being given too much credit, you know, for building successful teams. And if it was that easy, right, every coach would do it. But if you think back on this 2015 team and this group, how do you describe the way they kind of coalesced into one to achieve something that the program hadn't done before?
Oh, man, that's a tough question. So every organization, right, every team, whatever you want to think of it, it starts with people, and that's going to be a cliche answer. I'll try and get into, away from a cliche, but, that's what it is. I mean, I think of these three, Vic might be the only person who kind of played the same position the entire time. So you had people who were willing to do whatever. We turned Emma from a forward into a wide midfielder. Taylor might have played maybe every position. I don't know, except the goal. So you brought in people who were kind of willing to do that blue collar work. We still shout out to the current team for a 3.72 GPA this past semester. Try and find excellent students, not geniuses, not the smartest people, but excellent students. And there's a difference because they know what it's like to do all the things that these three have already said. They know what it's like to push yourself, to be responsible, to be mature, to have a goal, to want to surpass that goal. And then amazingly, right, they come to the field and they're the same way. And that's the type of people that we want to go find, so that I'm not making it win one for the Gipper speech every day. I'm not that guy, and to be honest, I try not to be that guy on purpose. Every once in a while you need a little fire to get going, but you want people who have that motivation to begin with. So I think you have to look for those kind of qualities, and then just guide, right? Talk to them a lot, see what they need. Is there a reason why this might not be clicking, or it is clicking? Have you thought about it this way? Just give this a try, see if it works. Don't worry if it fails the first 9 times. This is practice. It's okay for that to happen. People who buy into that. I mean, I could tell you about, we really get into the weeds on details of Emma and I having a conversation her junior year about whether she was playing on the right side or the left side. And me getting into the details of why it was the left, even though she wanted it on the right. She's second team all conference. She's scoring goals, and it's like, all right, I'll play on the left. But it's treating people, with that kind of respect, I think, as well, to have a conversation and not just say, do this because I told you.
To kind of continue on describing how a team comes together, and we have a bunch of people joining us on this conversation, former players, right, parents, maybe prospective student athletes, which, by the way, if you have any questions for these 4, feel free to throw them in the group chat, and we'll get to those as we go. I'm going to kind of switch the order around now and start back with Emma here, but the idea of 3 things I think people maybe wonder about if they were going to join a team, or they were wondering how a team worked, kind of values, culture, maybe style, right? So like, what are the team values? What's the team culture? And then literally, how do they play the game, right? What does it look like? Am I a player that would fit in? So Emma, I'll start with you and kind of the values question, right? If you were to describe what the values of the program were and are in your memory, how do you explain that?
Yeah, I mean, I specifically will think back to kind of my first visit on campus. And I remember one of the first things that kind of stood out to me was one of the old assistant coaches. She took me on a tour, and one of the things she said was, we're really big on academics. Like, academics is first, we're here for school, and then athletics comes second, right? I mean, they go hand in hand, but effort needs to be going into both. And I think that was the first time on one of my campus visits where a coach had said that. Like, it was always about athletics. And then finally someone had called out the academics, and that was really big, because at the end of the day, we are coming for school, and like, we are there for the grades, and we're there to learn. So that was one of the biggest things that I also then saw carry throughout my 4 years. I remember coming in as a freshman, and that thought I put it in the back of my mind a bit. We were doing so well in soccer and like making it so far that I was kind of putting academics a little bit behind. And I remember Brendan pulling me in for the end of season conversation. I thought, oh, this is going to be a great conversation. It's going to be, we just played so well, like all this stuff. And I remember him saying, so grades. And I was like, oh no. And I remember I had all of these excuses, and I had all of these reasons why my grades were low, but nothing on like what I hadn't been doing. And I think that was a moment of realization where I needed a little kick, and I needed to understand that, and I needed to see the effort. Like, our team really values effort in every place, right? We're putting 100% into practice, putting 100% into games, but we're also 100% in our classrooms and everything we do around the campus. So that definitely stuck with me. And I cannot express how thankful I am that he did give me that kick that I needed. But I also think then those conversations.
Not literal. Just so we're all on the same page. I remember not literal.
Not literal kick.
Sorry.
Just, yes. Yeah. Thanks for that. I'm sure people are really, really
thinking. My bosses are on the call. I just want to make sure.
Ariane did not kick me. But yeah, no, I think that was really important. And then I think, yeah, again, like, our class came in, I'll say it again, and it's not just because Taylor's on the call, but we came in with seniors who Emily, Udi, like I'm going to call other people that weren't just the captains, they always put in 100%. And I remember Brendan saying like look at the wide midfielders at the end of the games, and they're exhausted. The amount of running they were doing, the amount of effort, it wasn't even about, yes, there has to be skill, but it's how much you were going to put in. And from the very beginning, I think our class knew that was the biggest thing, and kind of one of the biggest values we had to carry throughout our years. So, yeah.
Taylor, I'll ask you about the style of play for the team. You played for the team, you coached with the team. For someone that was not familiar, how would you describe, if everything is going well for the team and it's executing the plan as the coaching staff would have dreamt it up, what does that look like from a soccer perspective?
That's hard to say because I think, and Brendan, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but it really depends on the group of players that you have at the time. There are some coaches in some programs that will say, this is going to be my style of play no matter what, no matter which players that I have. And I think that Brendan does a really good job of adapting and adjusting the style of play to the players that we actually have on the team at the time. So for example, I'm trying to think, my freshman year, our style of play was very, very different than it was maybe my junior year, just because of the different talent, the different depth that we had on the team. So I know that that's not necessarily a very specific answer, but it's pretty fluid. And I think that also allows for the best to come out of every player, rather than just, okay, we're going to play long and direct. Even if you're a super technical player, I still want you to get the ball and try to find the furthest forward. I think that having a fluid kind of style of play that adjusts and adapts based on the players, really, I mean, I enjoyed it as a player. And I think even as a coach, like, I was able to see how effective it was, rather than just sticking tried and true to one style.
Brendan, let's hop over to you just to kind of add some color to that. Is that kind of how you think about it, year in, year out, or maybe in 2-year bursts, depending on where you're at in the recruiting cycle as far as the style of play?
Yeah, 100%. Taylor's, absolutely 100% correct. I think it goes back to my answer before, right? Who are your people? I've sat in coaching courses and sat around other coaches, and they want to, go back and forth about what the best system of play is and this and that. And I'm really not interested in the conversation until you tell me who the people are. And then we'll start going from there. I think the one constant I try and have through all of it, though, is just to play fast, whatever that happens to be, right? To give the players the ability to read the game and make a decision and trust them to make that decision. But whatever that decision is, to do it fast. So if we're going to make 16 passes in a row before we score a goal, as long as we're making those passes quickly, if one pass works, if you can get the ball to one person and they can dribble 4 people, but they start doing it right away. So I want to give our players the freedom to make those decisions. And then on the defensive side of the ball, it's a little bit more concrete, as we do that. So I think just how we get organized and defend might be a little bit more consistent. But yeah, Taylor's absolutely right there. And again, I think hopefully that goes back to a life lesson of everything is not the same. If right now isn't the perfect example of not being able to adapt to a new environment around you, you're going to have a hard time. Teachers right now who are 5, 10, 20 years into a career and now all of a sudden have to go online and figure out how to educate people. We're all trying to figure out how to do something new right now. So that ability to take what's in front of you, read what's in front of you, take the information, make a decision, analyze it, and go, is hopefully one of the most important things that anyone can take from the program, and we try and do that on the field too.
Yeah, this has been the ultimate exercise in being able to be adaptable during the last 3 to 4 months. That is for sure. Victoria, I'll come over to you. And culture maybe bleeds in with values a little bit, but in your mind, what do you kind of remember the culture of this Manhattan program being?
Well, I think that prior to coming to Manhattan, I was a little naive in how to build culture and just thought you put a group of people together and whatever they'll end up with is what they'll end up with. But it was, for Brendan and for our team, a really intentional thing. He can say that it's just picking certain type of people, but he put an immense amount of effort into listening to us, tell him what we needed and what we thought were the important values and cultures of the team, and then telling us what he thought was essential and kind of collaborating. So I think that tells you a lot about the culture right there, that it wasn't just a passive thing that we would name some characteristics or adjectives and that would be that. I mean, we're talking like sitting down for hours and saying, what would be the best way to say this, the most clear way to communicate this with our players, and sending out PowerPoints. People, explain why you think that this is an important part of our culture, and really listening to each player on the team say, these are the things that I want involved. This is something that I feel is essential. And then having them be able to hear what the other players think and being very intentional about it. These are the things that we're going to hold as a team because we decided on them, not just because it's the basic things that you would imagine a good team to have. It was things that we were able to pick, we were able to speak about. And then ultimately, I think that has to do a lot with why so many people were able to get on board with it, because of the amount of people who were leading through doing those things and like leading through service and being that person who's not only going to tell you what to do, but be the one doing it as well. And then also just being really clear and intentional with our values.
Victoria, you mentioned before you came into school or as a freshman, right, being a bit naive to the importance of those things. I don't know if it's a moment or moments, but is there a time you can remember, and this might be tough on the spot, but is there a time you can remember where something tangibly on the field, a result, a win, a victory, something in practice happened and went well because of a result of the culture that was created? Like you can kind of connect the two and understand that we got to do this thing the way we wanted to because we took the time to create a good culture.
Yeah, I think it was just the culmination of my entire first year there. So the 2015 season, just kind of being able to see this is where we started and this is where we're going to end up. And this was all intentional. This wasn't just, we happened to have a good year with a bunch of good girls. It was, we intentionally created this environment and these standards, and we're going to hold everybody to them. So just that entire season, kind of seeing, I don't think there was a practice where I couldn't look to my left and right and see girls who were working so hard. And so just through that, we were able to tell what the tone was going to be. And then in addition to that, we had so many meetings individually with Brendan and as a team, just kind of to discuss what we expected in our standards. And once again, to use the word, to be really intentional with it. And I'm sure I'm speaking for the rest of the team at that time, and not only myself, but I feel as though I had that moment, not only with the team where I knew the values were working, but with myself, just kind of sitting down and realizing like, oh, this is what is needed of me. This is what I provide. This is where I'm lacking. And this is how I can improve as a person. And that's helped me far beyond the field.
We're talking with former captains here, alumni captains from Manhattan College Women's Soccer. If you have any questions, comments, feel free to add them in the Zoom chat. We had talked at the very top about kind of the opportunity to become a captain, Brendan, about how you go about picking these captains. Brendan, I'll come back to you. So you identify somebody that you think would be a good captain, or someone comes to you and says, I'd like to be a captain. And then maybe they don't know what to do after that. It's, what do you want me to do? How do I lead in this specific position? When you get those questions, do you have, kind of a one sheet, like this is what captains do, read this and then you'll know? Or is it more of an ongoing thing? How do you help people handle this thing that you see in them or that they see in themselves?
So I think to really get to the root of that question, I have to be honest in the sense of I was probably bad at it I was bad at it for the first, few years. I think, we named people captains and now they're captains. Let's go. And then we just went forward, as if like, that's just how that works. You get put in a leadership position and now now you know what you're doing. I think, I was probably trying to figure it out myself. I was hired at 29, I was still trying to figure that out for me. And I think just kind of taking a step back from being too worried about results helped me kind of see the bigger picture. And really around that same time, a few things coalesced. We had, 4 or 5 years to kind of lay that foundation down. I could kind of look at myself and have a little bit of self-reflection and say, you need to be better here. But really in 2015, I started a master's program at Manhattan College. Another shout out to them in organizational leadership. We're really kind of like, yeah, this is how you can help people lead. And so while I was hopefully getting better at that, I was trying to take some of what I was learning and walk through with them, to be more intentional about it, to steal Vic's word there. Because I think being a captain in a lot of ways is harder than being the coach, because you're everybody's peer at the same time you're trying to lead them. And you can run up into this, well, who are you? You're my roommate. Why do you get to tell me what to do type thing? And it can be a lonely place. And so you need somebody else there sometimes to help you get through that. But, Vic laid out a lot of what we did there, credit to all three of these, fantastic student athletes and players and now, female professionals in the world. They have literally left their mark. I mean, their leadership and values and culture that we put together and codified are on the back of our shirts. They're on our lockers and stickers. They're in presentations we still talk about and go through. But you have to give them the chance, the opportunity to go out there and do it, and then take a step back and reflect. And we went through a survey from our players of how the coaches and how the captains were doing at one point. We had to sit down and look at that cold hard data of what our peers said about us and say, okay, what do we do with this now and how do we get better? It's just constantly a matter of trying to put your ego aside. What am I doing well? What am I not doing well? What can I do better? How do I implement it? And I think that those are the steps that we try and really put through there.
Emma, both you and Victoria had talked about seeing Taylor as a captain as younger players and kind of admiring the way that she carried the job. When it was your turn, Emma, to be a captain, for you, I mean, I imagine you want to take some of what Taylor did that kind of worked well when you were a younger player, but how did you put your own spin on it and make that role your own?
Yeah, I mean, I touched on it a bit before, but like it was different for us too, I think, because there was 4 of us. So 4 of us all brought so many different things to the table. I think, like, obviously they were the 3 showing in action, like on the field, and Kelly, like I said, coming off the field with 0 voice. Like everyone brought something different, and I think it took me a while to kind of figure out how I was going to lead from the bench. But I think also, like, Taylor kind of showed that in her second year almost, right? She moved from this captain role where she was playing to then being a coach, which is on the sideline, but then she's also invested. So it kind of felt the same almost. So I kind of tried to pull from that a bit as well. Gosh, I don't know what else. It definitely was hard. I think whenever anybody gets injured, and I mean, Ariana can attest to this too, it's the most frustrating thing to know you can do something and not be able to do it, and then have to go and travel and sit through all these things, see frustration on your peers' faces and feel it with them as we're losing some games, and seeing what we could do better and trying to like articulate that. I think that was something, I mean, I took away personally from it, is that, I had to be a bit more of a better listener and communicator. And I hope I've taken some things and now applied that in the workplace. But yeah, I think it's all just a massive learning experience as well. Like Brendan said, we had surveys in the middle of the year, and you do that type of stuff in work, right? You have evaluations with your colleagues, and having that experience before even getting into the workplace and having that moment to self-reflect is such a career, like a character building thing that then is implemented into the workplace as well. So yeah, very thankful for that.
Victoria, I'll come to you as a fellow captain with Emma and one of those 4 captains. And I thought it was interesting. She was talking about kind of the feedback that you're getting during the middle of the year, and also that it's a group of 4. I think some people might think of captains occasionally as just one other voice, right? Just one person, or maybe a co-captain. As you're going through this season and you're getting feedback, how do you get a sense, beyond a survey or something like that, that the way that the 4 of you are doing it is working well for the team, and that you are providing this good example as 4 captains?
Well, I think it was nice in a way to have 4 of us to do that, because not only did we checked each other. So if someone was doing something that the other person thought was maybe ineffective, we had the relationship where we were able to look at each other and be like, hey, that might not help that person. Let's try it this way or that way. And I think we just had such a great relationship like that, where I could not have done it without every single one of them, and not even only the captains. I mean, we just had such a wonderful grade. I felt so lucky to be involved in that, and to have people who would come up to me and tell me, like, I really don't like when you speak to me like this. It doesn't help me. Can we try this? And I think that that's a lot of credit to Brendan and Brad, who built an environment where that was allowed and that could happen without people getting defensive. I think Brendan mentioned before, kind of putting your ego aside and learning that people might not necessarily like the way you do it, and some people might love it. So you have to kind of learn and be willing to learn and listen.
Taylor, both of the other athletes, Emma and Victoria, talked about looking up to you as a captain when you were older than them. If you think back to earlier in your career, were there captains that you looked up to and patterned your eventual, not to call it a reign, right? This isn't royalty, but your eventual leadership position after, where you kind of took something, or maybe you learned something from a different team or something else that you kind of put together to kind of form your own way of doing things?
Yeah, I think I'd have to agree with Brendan that I was definitely learning as I go. I think there was I fell victim to this, but there's a common misconception that leaders are born and like you either have it or you don't. And I'd say that there are definitely character traits that make people leaders, make people good leaders, but it's also something that you can practice and get better at. So I think when I was a freshman, looking up at Cara Davis was our sole captain. She was the senior goalkeeper. She was like the epitome of a good captain in my eyes. She held people accountable. She was one of the hardest workers. She was an excellent player. You could talk to her about difficult things. And I think that was definitely something that I tried to emulate when I became a captain, but also we definitely had to work at it. Like I remember having conversations with me, Kristen, and Brendan, and just saying, okay, how are we going to deal with this situation? Even just being more present as captains. Like I think there was a time where we were there and we were acting, but we were almost a little bit too silent. So it was like trying to build up that skill. I think something that I wish I would have done, and I can see this like looking back now that I'm in the workplace, but I wish I would have asked for feedback, just because that's so effective. So obviously I would get feedback from Brendan, and Kristen and I would talk, but getting feedback from the actual players, like Vic spoke about, that's really important. And I think it goes a long way. Brendan touched on this earlier, but he was constantly asking us like, hey, what can I do better? What's working? What's not working? And I think as a captain, as a leader, going to the people that you're leading and saying, hey, what am I doing well? What can I work on? What can I do to be a better leader? Not only will help improve your leadership, but it also shows them how much you care and how much you want to be a good leader. So yeah, I mean, that's just kind of echoing what everyone else said, that it's a learning experience. But I definitely had, some people to look up to, but it's hard. You have to keep working at it like anything else. Practice makes perfect.
And Taylor, you brought up a good point about gathering feedback. I think traditionally people could look at a captain or a coach or someone else in kind of this higher position and think that they must have all of the answers. They don't need to ask for any sort of feedback from someone who, on the hierarchy is beneath them, because they wouldn't be in this spot if they didn't know what they're doing. But to your point, as you said, that was very beneficial to you. And then you alluded to kind of being in the working world as well. Do you see some similarities there between whether you're a boss or whatever you might call it in the working world, but as far as that idea of even if you're in an opportunity to lead, it still helps to gather feedback from your team?
Oh, 100%. So I work at an asset management firm, and the kind of work that I do, my small group, my team changes every quarter. And my firm is very big on upwards and downwards feedback. So Every kind of project that we do, we'll get feedback from the lead of the project. We'll get feedback from the other people on our team, and they encourage us to ask for it if it's not being given. And also the leaders ask for it. So I was just on a call with one of my directors literally yesterday. And right before we were about to get off the phone, she was like, I just want to ask you before, like, while I have you, what can I be doing better to help you on this project? What can I be doing better to help lead you or help support you in the work that you're doing? So it comes up all the time at work. And I think it was good to have that like background from being a captain where you were constantly kind of trying to evaluate yourself. It really prepares you for the work environment. But yeah, all the time it's coming up in work. And I think it's really important, and you can like see yourself evolve. So I've gotten feedback, or I've solicited feedback, and I've taken it and I've tried to implement it, and then gotten feedback after the fact that said like, hey, I noticed that you kind of took what I said and you changed your actions, and that was really good that you did that. So it's an important skill, and something that I think everyone should get comfortable doing, even in personal relationships too.
That's excellent. I think what we just heard here over the last, especially 10 minutes or so, really important for people to know that aspire to be in leadership positions, right? I think Taylor brought up a good point. There is a feeling always that you're a born leader. That isn't necessarily the case, right? It is something that a skill you can develop. Being a leader doesn't mean you're all knowing, right? I think you heard all three talk about kind of the vulnerability of the position and being willing to seek out feedback and seek collaboration. So it's a very collaborative effort mixed with leadership. We just have a couple more minutes left here. So I just want to go around with the group one more time. We hit on it a little bit earlier about the journey. And I love just talking about this with athletes because it usually brings up fun memories and just positive stories about their experience on their team. I think we covered the highlight as far as this group of three athletes is concerned. We're talking about the 2015 semifinal victory and what that meant to the program. But Emma, I'll start back with you. If you can just kind of think back on the journey of your time with the Manhattan College program, and kind of as you're out of it now and you reflect back on it, what did those years mean to you? Even though you're not that far out, what did those 4 years mean to you?
So I specifically remember my freshman year, Taylor and Colleen saying to us in the locker room at almost the end of our season. No, it was a senior game, and the locker room, for people who haven't been in a college locker room, is the best. At least ours was. With our pump up music, our specific playlist, our songs that everyone had their own song. You turn to someone and be like, oh my God, it's your song, Kristen. And she'd jump up, and we all, like that feeling before a game, knowing you're about to step on the field with your friends and just put everything into it. I mean, I think every athlete knows there's nothing when you get out of college that hits that level. Like, you will never feel that high as when you're walking onto that field about to play. Or when you're walking off after a big win and listening to Empire State of Mind playing. I mean, those things are just moments you never forget. And I remember them turning to me our freshman year and saying, it was to all of us, and saying, you won't understand this until you get to this point, but these 4 years fly by, so please make the most of it. And I remember literally it felt like that, and we were at our senior day. And it's crazy how fast it flies by, but also how much we take away from it. I mean, when we all talk now, I mean, it's like we're reminiscing of our peak days. Like, I mean, we walk back for alumni game and we walk onto Gaelic, and it's like you hear the subway clanking and you're home. Like, for 4 years, that's your home, and it just doesn't change. So yeah, definitely.
Taylor, yeah. Sorry, the goal is not to make anyone cry, but I do know that these bring up some emotions. Taylor, I'll go back to you, and being a few years removed from playing, also the coaching experience, you get to be around the team, but in a different way. But if you just drill down on your time as a player and what that road from start to finish meant to you as you think back on it now, what comes to mind?
Yeah, it's truly one of the most fulfilling, if not the most fulfilling experience I've ever had. Playing for that team developing that program. I mean, it changed a ton, like we've talked about throughout my time on the team specifically. When I came in as a freshman, we were at the bottom of the conference, and we were just hoping to like maybe tie or not lose that bad. And you could kind of feel that mentality on the team. But each year we got a little better, and we focused really hard, and we're very deliberate on the field, but also on creating a winning mindset and a winning culture. So that by the time I was a senior, we weren't hoping to tie or not lose, but we were expecting to win. And I think that change of mindset was huge. And for me, being able to actually see it transform was really, really incredible. I think from my freshman to my senior year, our wins went up by a little bit every single year. And it's something that I am so proud of. I wish I wasn't so removed from it now so that I could like talk about it as my like most favorite accomplishment forever. But I don't know how long I can drag that out. But yeah, I'm so proud. I look at those memories. I'm gonna cry. Okay, I'm just gonna stop talking. Don't cry.
Yeah. Victoria, I'll go to you. And it's interesting. You talked about, right, just finishing your first year of law school. Yes.
Yes.
And it's a little bit like you traded one very intense experience for another. I think you'll probably come out of law school with some similar bonds of the people that made it through and what they did. So
Yeah.
you're creating a new experience that hopefully has you sweating less than being on the soccer field. But I want to ask you about your 4 years on the soccer team and that journey and what that's meant to you.
Well, obviously the soccer part was amazing, and I grew so much as a player, and found a lot of confidence in myself as a player through that. I don't think it was there are things that I would love to go back and change, 2 very specific final games, but even looking back with all of the flaws and everything else, I'm just so proud of everything that we've done. And I think you asked Taylor before, how do you go even if you don't know if that the goal that you're trying to achieve will be achieved? And the process is just the whole point of it. I think that the end would be great to reach where you want, but the whole process of going through that with the team is the most special part. And then just aside from actually playing, just being a member of the team and attending Manhattan College, I just truly would not be the person that I am today. And I'm going to start crying too, but it's helped me in every single aspect of my life, without question. Just having confidence in myself to do certain things, being able to square up and face really difficult tasks and know maybe you are going to fail, maybe you're not going to reach the potential goal, but the whole point of trying and giving it your all it's really worth something at the end. So
that's really well said. There's an old Olympic coach that talks about the journey to an Olympic Games, much like 4 years in college, there's 4 years towards the games. And he says at the end of this thing, one way or another, you're going to cry. And it's going to be either a good cry or maybe the game didn't work out, but you're going to cry that way too, because you put so much into it. So if you're listening to this and you're thinking, oh, the journey and the process, it sounds all cliche, find yourself a very committed team to be a part of, and you will change your mind on that, because this is what happens when you give yourself into something larger than yourself. Brendan, I'll kind of just close with you. You have a different perspective on this, in that these athletes can very much look at their time as a 4-year window of their life, or if they stayed on as a coach, a 5 or 6 year window, but you're the coach for a longer period of time. How do you reflect back on these groups? Is it year by year? Do you look at it in multi-year chunks? How do you kind of reflect on what has been accomplished during your time there?
I think, the one thing I'm going to say before I really get into that, Greg, is I think they all kind of talked about it being difficult. I know Vic just said the word difficult. I think that's really an important thing to understand. That's kind of why you do it, right? It's we have a presentation that's got JFK's quote about going to the moon, right? We choose to go to the moon, and we do other things, not because it's easy, but because it's hard. And that's where you accomplish great things. And all of them went up and down. Their journey is not linear. It was up with a lot of playing time and then down, and we had to talk about why and all those kind of things. But how do I go back and reflect? I think 29-year-old Brendan went back and reflected and said our win-loss record wasn't good enough. And then 30-year-old Brendan said the same thing. And I was like, I got to start looking at this in a different way. And when I started looking at it in a different way and tried to be more holistic, again, that plus recruiting great people, those kind of things turned around, because you can see it in a leader when they're tense and they're upset and about the results and all that kind of, it doesn't help anybody perform any better. When my anxiety is now being played off on everybody else. So, that's part of it, trying to look back on, as they said before, things that work and things that don't. But now I think to the point where I can hear my 2.5-year-old daughter's feet running above me. And, you try and have a much bigger perspective on life and just look at what they're doing. I mean, talking about what we did, and that matters. And I want to win everything, right? Like a funny little quick story. My parents took away my Nintendo Entertainment System because I got too mad playing it and broke too many controllers. I'm still that guy. I can just control myself better. But I recognize now that that's not the reason why I do it, right? You're trying to have a bigger impact, as you just said, Greg, on something much bigger than you, and hopefully trying to make a world a better place. And I know these three and everybody else. I mean, I see Annie Doerr's name on our list here, and I mean, the things that she's doing to help people are amazing. And it's just it's a great thing to be a part of.
That's an excellent way to end it. Thanks, Coach, and thanks to everyone who joined us here today. Coach Brendan Lawler, Emma Saul, Victoria Reis, Taylor Salkowsky. Appreciate your time and your thoughts and your memories. And